Hey, hello. It is July 22nd. I'm chilling in the pretty warm, but also relatively cool Colorado mountain air. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are at in the world. Today we are going to dive into all things Venus retrograde and the intimate interconnection of erotic integration. Can I just get like a yes, you can hear me? I'm outside, and just like last time, even though I do live rather remote, there's a canyon road and sometimes the sounds get a little bit loud. So can I just get someone like, yes, Liz, we can hear you, or yeah, you need to project your voice a little bit more. Can someone just give me some feedback on that? Thank you. Before I dive in, thank you so much. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of the birthday wishes. Like, even though I was off of Instagram for my birthday and for the kind of like 2 weeks before, I got so many beautiful just like texts and emails and messages and direct messages. And it was really cool to feel the more intimate side of Instagram and of social media, where it's like, you know, I really genuinely enjoy showing up here and creating. Thank you for all the feedback. Super appreciate that. I genuinely enjoy showing up here and sharing and creating and collaborating and having conversations. And also it was just super cool to feel the personal side. So thank you to everyone who contributed to that. Second, Venus retrograde. So I'm sure y'all know about Mercury retrograde, right? We always go, oh, of course this is going wrong. Of course everything's bad. It's Mercury retrograde. And there are many a meme that make fun of that. Rightly so. Rather than thinking of this conversation as some kind of like scare tactic around like, things to prepare for Venus retrograde, I want you to actually think of it as a mindset or a lens that you start looking through as we move through the next, until the first weekend of September, the next handful of weeks, as Venus, the planet of values, that's how I like to conceptualize Venus, and we'll get to what kind of values in a little bit. But as Venus, the planet of values, starts to move backwards, I'm someone who has a lot of retrograde planets in my natal chart. None of my personal planets are retrograde, but almost all of my outer planets are retrograde. So I've done a lot of searching and digging and unpacking on what it means to have planets retrograde. Like, what kind of lens do we want to look through when something is moving backwards? And what I always find, and I'd love to hear if you are someone who has a lot of planets retrograde, or you're just someone who has unpacked this as well, what your perceptions are on this. But mine are always, when something's moving backwards, we're in a review period. And whenever we're in a review period, I think it's fun to decondition. To decondition in a way that's a little bit more intimate, a little bit more inward, a little bit more personal, where we almost internalize the energy of the planet. And as we internalize the energy of the planet, we look really closely and also buoyantly, because we don't need to take ourselves more seriously through these times. We don't need to like hyper focus on the morality of getting something right versus getting it wrong. But more focusing on the dynamic that we hold inward regarding the planet. So specifically with Venus, I feel like Venus gets a little bit distorted because sex gets distorted, and the masculine gets distorted, and the feminine gets distorted, because we've all grown up, we've all lived, we've all soaked in the marinade of cultural conditioning. And that marinade in no way needs to be demonized, right? Like, look at all the things that we've done as humans under the influence of cultural conditioning, under the influence of the myths of cultural conditioning, of, you know, the many years of information that we've accumulated as intelligent beings. And so in no way do I want to demonize anything. However, I do want to speak to the reason that this felt like such a almost kind of passion project, to say, hey, yeah, for the next 6 or 7 weeks, let's hop on here and start having some conversations about this Venus retrograde. The reason is because for the last 8 years, I've worked really up close and personal with a lot of humans, primarily women, but sometimes men too. And when I'm working up close and personal with people, something that I see frequently, and more so as I've integrated erotic integration into how I coach and guide people, but something I see so regularly is this attachment to how things are supposed to be. You know, drop an emoji if you catch yourself feeling attachment often to how things are supposed to be. And if you catch yourself in those moments then being like, wait a minute, where the hell did this idea of how something is supposed to be even come from? Like, where did it even arrive from? Excuse me while I take a sip of my concoction here. I don't know if you guys ever use like whipping cream in your coffee. It's real. It's so good. It's like heavy whipping cream. Shake it up, pour it in. Mwah. So good. Okay. So that is something that I come up close and personal with a lot. Whether people are in male bodies or female bodies or don't identify with either, there is this very real friction point where, whether it's subtle or not, there's attachment to, oh, I've learned that this is what sexy looks like. I've learned that this is what intelligent looks like. I've learned that this is what successful looks like. Just close this for a second. I like notes because they keep me on track. There's so many things that I could talk about. But the reason that I want to have these conversations is because I want us to all soberly and without judgment, even though we are going to talk about how judgment's super fucking important in this conversation, but I want us to all soberly, without judgment, bring these eyes, bring this awareness to this conversation that's like, hey, look, there is no one right way. Like, when push comes to shove, there is no one right way. Everybody has a different right way, and you know that right way by how it feels in your body. Now, we live in cultural conditioning that has, whether purposely or not, covertly, in my opinion, unless you're one of you listening, in which case it's probably not very covert at all, but cultural conditioning has encouraged us to dissociate from our body feedback. And so rather than move into spaces of intimacy, connection, attraction, romance, sensuality, sexuality, rather than move into those spaces, following that inner guidance, that's like, hey, how does this feel for me? How does it feel in my body to move through this experience, and trusting that body feedback as we move through it? Rather than move through spaces like that, we tend to move through spaces with our mental plane, being guided by attachment to how something should be. One of the most common things that comes up, and excuse me if my language is a little bit off, my root canal tooth has been bothering me a little bit, so it's actually kind of changing the mechanics of how I talk, because it's really sensational. So if I stumble, bear with me, it's a little bit vulnerable, but here we are, we're humans. We have weird shit that happens to our bodies, and it's sensational. One of the most common things that I see unfold when I'm moving with humans through erotic integration is people start doing their self-pleasure practices, which I'm going to start using the language of autoerotic practice, because the point of an autoerotic or self-pleasure practice is actually to drop in with our bodies and start to connect to sensation, right? Start to connect to things that are sensational. In fact, right now, as you're listening to me, close your eyes. Close your eyes. As you close your eyes, take a deep breath in through your nose. Okay? Let your senses turn on, the senses that are not visual. Breathe in through your nose again. Let your belly expand and feel the air on your skin. It might be really hot. It might be really stagnant. There might be a cool breeze. That's a sensation, right? Our skin has a feedback system that tells our body, our nervous system, what's happening in our environment. As you take your next deep breath, attune to what you smell. Are you picking up on any sense in your environment? Okay, these are sensations. This is how I explain sensation. There's lots of sensation. Are you feeling warm? Are you sweating? Is there a bead of sweat trickling down your face? Does that create a sensation, right? Do you have to go take a poop? If so, you're probably experiencing some sensation. Do you need to pee? Are you thirsty? Are you hungry? There's all of these ripple effects of our experience that we experience through sensation. And in my opinion, in my experience, sensation is the language of the body. When we get into autoerotic practice, what we're doing is we're practicing creating, well, one, connecting to the sensations of our environment naturally, and then two, creating more sensation, whether it's through body touch, breath, connecting to music, genital stimulation, right, touching ourselves. We're creating more sensation, and then we're breathing it through our bodies so that our bodies, which are conduits for sensation, conduits for eros, conduits for life force, can get better at, can get practiced at holding more sensation. We're beings that move so fast, and we live in environments. I mean, even just think about your environment that you live in. Think about driving in a car. Think about having fluorescent overhead lighting. Think about the air that we breathe, or like just sound pollution, right? Environments condition, they tonify our nervous systems. And we're beings that have nervous systems that have been really conditioned by stimulus that tells us, okay, protect yourself, close, everything's dangerous, move faster, distract yourself, right? There's a lot of sensation that tells us to do that. And as we do that, we get more and more shallow on the surface of our experience instead of coming down into the sensational part of our experience. So a lot of us, just by the nature of our conditioning, just by the nature of our environments, don't actually have a lot of capacity to hold sensation in our bodies. Sensation is not just pleasure. Sometimes sensation's really uncomfortable. I got my ass handed to me on this. I'll talk about it another day. But on my birthday psychedelic trip, I got my ass handed to me about this. At Tooth started giving me this insane sensation a couple hours in, and my whole face was melting off. And I was like, you're getting a dose of your own medicine, Alyssa. Do you have the capacity to breathe into the experience of feeling this sensation? Or are you going to shut off and get in your head and come up here to the mental plane as a way to dissociate from your body experience? Whew, it was humbling. Anyways, that is why I want to unpack Venus retrograde as an intimate interconnection point to Eros. Because to me, Eros is a far bigger conversation than sex, right? Eros is a conversation that spans almost every single field. The fact that, you know, and I might botch this, I took organic chemistry years ago, but the fact that a negative, what is the negative? The oxygen is not, does oxygen have a negative charge? And someone on here I'm sure knows. And hydrogen has positive charge. The fact that there are elements that are attracted to each other is erotic in nature, right? The fact that bees go and pollinate flowers and then there's fruit. The fact that, you know, there's fungus under the ground, there's mycelium everywhere, and they're connecting and they're helping trees to communicate and feeding ecosystems. The fact that we rely on predators to keep prey in check, right? Like everything is interconnected, and that itself is erotic. And so, yes, of course, the conversation that I want to move us toward is innately sexual. And as Venus retrogrades through Leo, which, who's familiar, you know, the handful of you who are on here right now, just pop a word into the comments when you hear the archetype, the astrological archetype of Leo. What do you think of? The sun, right? I am the center of the universe. I like to express myself. I want to be seen. There's theatrics here. There's vulnerability, because whenever we express ourselves, it's sensational, it's vulnerable. And there's lots of different octaves of that expression. Lion, the lion, right? Pride, proud, courageous, big-hearted. I love the lion. Thank you for bringing us back to that simple point, and also profound point. It's primal. It's survival-oriented. And it's gorgeous. It's majestic. It's strong. So Venus, the planet of our values, I want to unpack this today primarily. I want today to be our jumping off point. I want today to be where we kind of set the foundation so that in the weeks to come we can unpack some really specific things, some more nuance around this conversation, and all be on the same page. So how I personally perceive Venus is, and I'm going to go to my notes for this because I really want to stay super specific in this, and I took some time this morning to get really clear on it. So how I perceive Venus is the filter or the planet of our values. So if you go into your astrological natal chart and you find where your Venus sits, you can be like, oh yeah, okay, my Venus is in Capricorn, for example, right? The moment I was born, the planet Venus was sitting in the constellation of Capricorn, and therefore is being conditioned by the constellation or the archetype of Capricorn, right? This would be, if we were going to just really quick do some like fun, Venus in Capricorn might feel kind of dominatrix-y. It might be like, hey, listen, I want to control the situation. I value having control. I value a sense of professionalism. I value caring for other people. I value structure. Okay, so that might be Venus in Capricorn. Venus helps us to establish our values. And in order to establish our values, right, a value being, and here's the exact definition, a principle or standard of behavior based on one's judgment of what's important in life. Now think about that for a second. Usually when we talk about Venus, we say what? Oh, it's the boudoir, yes, the planet of love. It's so fluffy and soft and feather boas. Yeah, fuck that. That is a face of Venus. But Venus is actually quite fierce. How? Think about love. Think about real fucking love. It's gritty. Why is it gritty? Because you have to judge. Think about the rulers. Think about the astrological correlations with Venus. Think of Libra, right? Libra and Taurus are the two astrological signs that we correlate with Venus. Libra kind of being the outer expression of Venus, the interpersonal, the fairness, the judging, the scales, right? How do we balance the scales in order to find harmony? Well, we have to judge, because to know what our values are, we have to be discerning. To know what our values are, we have to say, hey, I really value my sense of inner peace. How much do I value that? Enough that, I don't really have the value of being a millionaire in this life, because for me, that's going to cost me in this moment, and this is just, I'm bullshitting here. We can go wherever we want with this. That's going to cost me my peace of mind. I'm going to have to always be on the phone. I'm going to have to always be multitasking. I'm going to always have to be thinking about managing my business or someone else's business or some other thing. Yeah, actually, I guess I value simplicity, because simplicity helps me to keep a sense of inner calm and inner peace, a groundedness. Now, this might be different for everybody, and it should be, because everybody's Venus is in a different sign, and everybody's Venus is in a different house. So yeah, my values are going to look different than yours, as they should. And that's part of the Venus retrograde conversation here, which is, let's let go of some of the white knuckling that we do to a right way to hold values, right things to value, right? So to establish our values in the first place, we have to be judgmental. We have to be kind of fierce. We have to say, you know what? If I value integrity, then I always need to tell the truth. And sometimes that's going to be really scary to tell the truth. Sometimes that's going to be terrifying, in fact, and it's going to make me feel vulnerable, and I'm going to have to be courageous. But if I value that, then I need to be willing to not just pay lip service to it, but also to expend resources on it, right? So when we start thinking about Venus, and we start thinking about, hey, Venus is the planet of love, I want to invite us to go beyond the bedroom. I want us to think about like fucking radical love. When we're talking about love, when we're talking about self-love, I want you to feel the grit that's required to embody love, right? And I want you to feel invitation to feel the sensation that sometimes comes with that. That comes with having to say, you know what, no, I get why you're doing that thing, but it doesn't align with my values. And in order to exalt my connection, my internalization through these next, 40 days essentially of Venus retrograde, I need to stay true to my values. I actually even need to want to get to look at what my values really are. Now, some of you might be going, Alyssa, this, I get it, this is cool, but how does this have anything to do with sex? How does this have anything to do with eros? How does this have anything to do with our self-expression or with deconditioning our sex or deconditioning what we think is attractive? Well, it intimately has to do with those things, because when we start to actually decondition our values and embody our values, like through and through, in my opinion, that's actually what makes people attractive. Think about for a moment, if there's the most perfect physical specimen in front of you, but maybe they're not grounded into their values. Maybe they don't really have values. Maybe they're not really clear on their values. Maybe they follow the scripts of what culture has told us is sexy, is attractive. And yeah, sure, that can get them so far. And no judgment toward these people. That's no judgment in the comparison kind of way, right? But this is what we perceive attractiveness to be, is some physical perfection. Sure, beauty is intelligence, and yes, physical perfection can be fucking gorgeous and attractive. But in my opinion, we are a species that is moving toward a whole being attractiveness. A type of attractiveness that actually emanates from you or me or all of us being our unique self. Being like, yeah, hey, my name's Alyssa. I'm kind of weird. I live in the mountains. I got a yellow tooth. I like to talk about this esoteric shit. I really like food. Love having sex. When it's meaningful, when I feel intellectually connected to the person and my heart feels open and I feel safe with them. Yeah, I like to grow food. Yeah, I love dance floors. I love cosmic conversations. Love to smoke a good spliff. Love to hit a joint. Love to drink coffee with heavy whipping cream on it. Who are you? Oh, cool, you're this person. You play the guitar. You like to do woodworking, right? Like, really opening into our uniqueness. Deconditioning from the scripts of Venus. You know, the low octave, oh, if you want to be sexy, then you have to look like this, talk like this, walk like this. This is what Venus retrograde is actually bringing us back into. Is a reminder that says, hey, there is no one right way here. There's no one right way here. And what that means is that permission to you, permission to me, permission to all of us to reclaim the way that's right for us as individuals. Are y'all feeling this right now? Is it easy to follow? I hope so. So I want to move on here. So the other way that me being clear on my values and you being clear on your values implies eros, implies the Venus archetype, is that the Venus archetype is our values, particularly in regard to our interpersonal connections, right? Our partnerships, our romantic relationships, our intimate, but maybe not sexual or maybe not romantic, but our intimate relationships, our friendships, our business partnerships, right? Venus speaks to the self, and the self implies the other. Yes. Yeah. Okay. So someone just shared, and thank you for this. I'm not going to use names because when I save this, I like it to be anonymous, just so that if it's something that you're sharing that's more personal, then it doesn't, safety is great. Okay. Yeah. I feel like we're all about to reevaluate our boundaries based on our values. Yeah. So that's going to be one of the weeks, is boundaries are not punishments. And I was going to show you it written out so that you feel our same pageness, but who fucking knows where it is. Boundaries aren't punishments. That's going to be one of the weeks that we talk about, We're going to talk about sensation and pleasure and pain. We're going to talk about, this burning the scripts of sex, of like what classic sex should look like. Because let's just face it, most people I talk to are not satisfied with their sex. Doesn't matter their gender. They're not satisfied with how they move erotic or sex energy through their body with another person. Why do we think that is? Well, because probably most of the people I'm talking to are aware of their body feedback, and their body feedback is like, yeah, cool. Like, have you heard the song? It's like, sex is good, but have you? And then it's like this like house kind of like up, and he's like, sex is good, but have you had a hot donut? And when I first heard the song, I was like, this is hilarious. And the second time I heard the song, I was like, oh, I kind of feel like this is saying a lot about the kind of sex we're having. And hot donuts are fucking delicious, but I would always take cosmic embodied sex over a hot donut. And I love food, like I said a couple minutes ago. So anyways, there's a lot happening here. And if you don't know your values, to your point, then you don't know your boundaries. If you don't know your values, then you don't know your boundaries. And if you don't know your boundaries, then you don't know where you can open or where you need to close. If you don't know your values, then you might not really realize what makes you feel attracted to a person. And that's okay. You don't need to intellectualize what makes you attracted to a person. However, there's a lot of times where, let's say, Venus and Leo low octave right now. Oh, I value affirmation. I value attention. That's Venus and Leo. I have Venus and Leo, by the way. So I know, I know the shadow state real well. And then there comes a moment where the Venus and Leo shadow starts to realize that if it's seeking affirmation from outside sources, then it's a victim, really, because it's not clear enough with itself that it values itself. It's not clear enough with itself that it has this internal sense of power. And I feel like when it comes to the conversation of sex and eros and attractiveness, we're always looking for outside validation. And it's a tricky dance because, yeah, self implies other. So we always are going to be getting feedback from the other. But the polarity of Leo is what? What's the opposite of Leo? Someone hit me with it. Aquarius. The polarity of Leo is Aquarius. And just like every other sign, Aquarius can have a shadow state, Aquarius can have a low octave. But its higher octave expression is what? It's individuality. It's grounded into its individuality enough to say, yeah, you know what? I'm going to bring my individuality to the whole and express it, Leo, vulnerably, knowing that this is making me vulnerable. But I'm going to have the courage of the lion, and I'm going to bring my individuality into the group. And as I do that, I become a contributing part of the whole. But we can't hone our individuality if we don't know our values. Okay, I'm going to read a response. Totally having to confront where boundaries came from and if they're effective or if they're just giving the illusion of control and safety. Yeah, and what's really cool about this is that when we have the boundaries are not punishments conversation, something that I'm going to bring in that is a little bit controversial, and also I feel really strongly about it, and this was a body response that I started having to people saying things like, that makes me feel unsafe. I love when people express when they don't feel safe. It's really helpful. And also, in my opinion, my sense, and this is my own experience projected into this conversation, my sense of safety comes from me. My sense of safety comes from me. And so if I start blaming my lack of feeling safe on other people, then technically I feel like a victim. And that's just my own body experience. That's my own body feedback. But we're going to have that conversation because we are never in control. And yes, we can create safety by creating really good boundaries. And how we do that is transparency and knowing our values. We can be more transparent when we know our values, right? So I want to just introduce this kind of framework for people to use, for you to use, for anyone to use as you move through Venus retrograde. Here's the framework. We have already established that knowing values is really fucking important, right? Like having an anchor point to your own values is going to make your Venus really healthy. And everybody has Leo in their natal chart. All you need to do is find the house that Leo rules in your natal chart and go look at what's happening there, because Venus is transiting through that house and therefore is influencing that house and is bringing some questions to that part of your life. So for example, for me, Leo rules my 7th house, the house of the house of relationships, but particularly partnerships. So for me, as Venus in the sky retrogrades through Leo, it's going to be bringing questions of Alyssa in your partnerships. What do you value? And are you embodying those values? Not just are you projecting them out onto other people. You know, Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about Venus in a way that I fucking love, because I always, the law of correspondence, as above, so below, as within, so without. When I learned that, I was like, yes, that makes sense to me, because I can feel that. That was something that, like, in my business, I started to learn. When my frequency was fucked up, when I was doing things to prove I could, when I was doing things from a victim state, when I was defending myself, when I was doing all this stuff that didn't really actually feel super good, like low frequency, again, no judgment at myself. We know what we know. And I was always worried about booking clients and having enough. And this was like maybe 2017, 2018 that this like really hit me. I wasn't getting the success that I wanted. And I remember the inner frequency shift happening and me really like taking the time every single day to evoke the field of potential and to make sure that anything I did that day was dialed from my mindset. And this is a process. I'm still not a master at any of this. But immediately I began to feel a difference in how the environment responded to me, because my internal world was healthier. And so my external world also started to become healthier. So that law of correspondence, that as above, so below, as within, so without, is really real. And the reason that I want to ground this conversation into essentially that, right? Jeffrey Wolf Green talks about the two faces of Venus, the inner face of Venus, right? Our inner experience, our what I like to call our mindscape and our inner monologue and our kind of sense of identity and our beingness, our person is how I identify with it often, or how I'll call it. That's our inner. And what do? We project our inner world onto the outer world. What does Anais Nin say? We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. And to me, there are no truer words. As within, so without. You know that. I know I'm preaching to the choir. But this is why we start the Venus retrograde conversation with, listen, we've all sat in the soup of conditioning, in the marinade of conditioning, and therefore we have all absorbed certain points of conditioning. And so as Venus, who isn't just about the boudoir, the soft love, the fluffy boas, as Venus goes retrograde, tap into that fierceness, that the planet, the eye, the all-seeing. Think about when you see Venus in the sky. She is radiant, or it is radiant, bright, unrelenting. Truly. Next time you see Venus, really stop and like let that light just hit your face. It's kind of fucking epic. So as Venus goes retrograde, let's stop imagining her as some fluffy feathered boa and start imagining her as a fierce archetype that says, listen, yeah, love can be soft and tender, but love can also be gritty and hard. And if you can hone the sensation to hold that truth in your body, you are going to have a lot healthier Venus. You're going to have a lot healthier relationship with your sex, with your body, with pleasure, with pain, with embodying your values. Okay? So the steps that I want to give us before I kind of juxtapose my own experience and my own some of my own story around, specifically today I'm going to unpack the conversation around lingerie, which I know it's like a little paradoxical. I'm sitting here in a sports bra, I've got lace on. Yeah, got it. There's nothing wrong with lingerie, but we'll move into that. But first I want to lay this groundwork, and that way as you move through Venus retrograde, you can use this groundwork to really dial into, your own process, because you can move through the next handful of weeks until the first weekend of September. I think it's like September 3rd that it ends. And decondition in a way that's wholehearted, in a way that raises your frequency, in a way that keeps your body and your mind healthy and gets you in the rhythm, gets you in the flow, lets you start to feel your own experience as your own experience, because you're deconditioning your values, Venus. So we know self implies other, and before we get into the interplay of self and other, we start with self, because we see other as we are, right? So as we move through Venus retrograde, my invitation to you is to start to just wipe the slate clean. Now, everything I'm about to take you through, you can also do with your human design strategy and authority. Okay, you can, for sure. And you can also just follow these steps. So first of all, wipe the slate clean. What do I mean by that? Don't attach to your pre-programmed, your pre-conditioned good, bad, right, wrong. For example, let's say you're out at a bar tonight. There's music playing, it's open air, you're in the vibe, and you see someone at the bar and you're like, wow, they're super fucking attractive. I like really want to go hit them up. And all of a sudden in your head, you attach to like, oh, maybe they're going to go home with me. Maybe they're going to like compliment me back. Maybe, right? You start to attach to all these ways that this situation could play out right, correct, good. You walk over to the person, you're confident, but you're a little scared. You take a deep breath and you're like, hey, wow, like, I don't know what is happening, but like something just pulled me to you. Like something just brought me over to you, and I'm feeling really attracted to you. And I wanted to tell you that. And I'm curious, like, could I buy you a drink? Like, no strings, just curious, right? You start having this conversation and you start connecting with this person. And maybe it's really enjoyable, but maybe they don't advance. Maybe they don't give you their number. Maybe, let's actually say that. Maybe they don't give you their number. Maybe they don't invite you home. Maybe they're like, cool, yeah, I'd love to have a drink. And you have a great conversation, and then you kind of go your separate ways. The invitation here would be, hey, rather than falling back on the preconditioned programming that says, ooh, you failed because you didn't go home with them, you didn't get their number, it didn't go the way you were attached to it going based on all of the rom-com movies you've ever watched, all the romantic books you've ever read, the fact that now you have to go back to your friends and tell them that you didn't get their number. Rather than staying attached to that programming, can you actually feel how the sensation of the experience fed you? And how you got to be present in this experience, enjoying it, even though it didn't go how you thought it was supposed to go. Okay, so that's number one. Wipe the conditioned slate clean. Stop attaching to good, bad, especially good, bad that you've been taught. Particularly and specifically good, bad that you have been taught. Stop attaching to that. Stop attaching to right, wrong that you've been taught. Okay, that's number one. Number two, as you do that, start to play with putting your awareness on your own body resonance or lack thereof. Everybody can understand resonance through music, right? Most people listen to music at some point. You're driving in the car, you put your Spotify on. You're doing a workout, you put your songs on. You know what it feels like when a song comes on that you were like, nope, immediately no, change the song, goodbye, burp, next, right? Everybody knows that feeling. That's dissonance. The vibration, the harmony, the flow, hello, Mr. Hummingbird, of the song does not go with my mood right now. Next. That's dissonance. Resonance. Oh, wow. I like how that sounds. It lands in my body in a way that makes me want to sway. And ooh, yeah, could listen to that shit all day. That's resonance. Okay? So wipe the slate clean of how things should be and start using body responses, body feedback, the tuning fucking fork that is your body. Start using it. Start noticing when things land. 11:11. Start noticing when they don't. and start to use that as your own personal gauge of, hold on. Gotta feed my brain some fat. Start using that body feedback as your own personal gauge. Now, in addition to resonance and dissonance, start noticing your mindscape. For example, when something doesn't go your way, right? That bar situation that I just played out, the vibes were great, the connection was dialed, it was awesome, but you didn't get the person's number, they didn't advance, nothing happened, aside from enjoying 30 minutes of fucking bomb-ass conversation. Does your mind go into a pattern? And this is what we're looking for here with all of this, right? Pattern recognition. Use the things that repeat over and over in your own perception, in your own mind, in your own body as signposts and markers, because patterns don't really lie. They don't. Pattern. I'm always about 30 minutes late for Instagram lives. That's a pattern. If you look at that, it's consistent. It's a pattern. It doesn't lie. So start to notice your patterns. When the bar situation where you approach the person, your vibe and you don't get their number, you don't go home with them, they don't advance, but you had a great conversation, you had a great time. When it doesn't go the way that you wanted it to, do you go into victim mind? Oh, no one's ever gonna want to date me. No one's ever gonna want to fuck me. I never get my way. It always sucks. Why does this always happen to me? Do you go into victim mind? Serious question. That's a pattern to watch. That's a pattern to watch. Okay? So 1, you wipe the slate clean. 2, and when I say wipe the slate clean, I mean stop attaching to good, bad based on your conditioning, based on your programming, based on the shit we all have. Woo! 3, watch the patterns. Watch the patterns. And start to use those patterns. Start to use your organic body feedback. Start to use resonance and dissonance. Start to use the patterns of your mindscape as ways to cue you into like, yeah, this is actually absolutely for me. This retrograde shit, really helpful. Like it a lot. Or, you know what? Maybe it works for Liz. Maybe it works for some people. Not for me. Cool. That's what we're doing here, actually, is we're going, yes, different strokes, different folks. Different strokes for different folks. There we go. Different strokes, different folks. My brain just short-circuited there for a second. Happens. Number 4, bring in judgment. Not self-judgment. Not comparison of self or other, inferior, superior, inferior. Not that kind of judgment, but the kind of judgment that is true, open-hearted discernment. Which is, you know what? If I feel dissonance with that person, if I feel dissonance with that value, even though I've been conditioned to think it's right or good, I'm actually going to cut its head off. I'm going to cut it out of my life. I'm going to dissolve it entirely. So for example, let's say you've been taught to value monogamy and you actually experience dissonance with this value. And you're like, you know what I really do value, where I feel resonance, is open-hearted relating that's super transparent, always in integrity, telling of the truth, and that doesn't really limit me to one safe way of being in relationship. That's what I feel resonance with, and I feel dissonance with monogamy. Okay, cool. That's a really perfect example of a type of Venus retrograde dance. Okay? Monogamy is great if you have resonance with it. And if you don't, then you don't. And then how can you decondition that any other way aside from monogamy is bad? By using your integrity, your values, and your sense of truth by attuning to your body feedback. Yes? Okay, there's lots of these. We could use thinness as another one, right? We could say, oh, okay, during this Venus retrograde, as I wipe the slate clean and I let my organic awareness start to open up, I'm realizing that, I've been conditioned to value thinness or like no belly fat. And what I'm starting to realize is actually, as I decondition, I don't really care if I have some belly fat. That's fine. That was a value that I marinated in because of my cultural conditioning, because I thought I was only going to be perceived as sexy or attractive if I didn't have any belly fat. But what I'm realizing is, through following that organic body feedback, is actually it's more about how I feel in my body. Do I feel healthy? Do I feel alive? Do I feel sensational? Do I feel like I can move? Do I feel like I can dance? Do I feel like I can whine and feel life move through my body, belly fat or not? Yeah, okay, I can. Okay, cool. That's a value, no belly fat, that I'm going to decondition, that I'm going to dissolve because I don't actually value it. I've just marinated in the conditioning of valuing it. Now, as you do this and you get clear on your actual values, it's not going to always be easy. And that's why I keep saying the thing about Venus. Venus isn't just this like bedroom contained feather boa, light fluffy bubble bath goddess. She's also fucking fierce, or he or they. Venus could be androgynous. We're probably all trending that way anyways. Who knows? I don't. But yeah, it's not always going to be easy. So sometimes, always actually, as we do this dance, as we move through those steps, as you use this framework, as you come face to face with your conditioning, there's going to be moments where you're like, damn, that's fucking uncomfortable. That's really sensational. I remember, I think it was, this will feel familiar to some of you who have followed along or have engaged. I really like to say who have observed. I'm an observed person. In my human design primary health system, I do the best when I'm observed. Some people are observers, right? We need both. They imply each other. Some of you who have been around for a while, thank you if you have, will feel familiar with me talking about this, but back in like 2000, I think it was 17 actually, the summer of 2017, I really started to notice in my own experience, kind of what I was just talking about around belly fat and thinness. I was like, oh, actually, my attachment to that value of thinness or no belly fat is actually more about how people perceive my sense of self-discipline. And that was like a really confrontational conditioning construct that I got to come face to face with. That was kind of ugly. I was like, ooh, Liz, like, yikes. Wow. Okay. And it's okay. We're humans. None of us are perfect. And so, yeah, there's going to be moments when we do this dance, when you move through this structure, that you're going to come face to face with your conditioning, and it's going to be sensational. And that is why, again, going to shamelessly plug it, get yourself, regardless of your gender, regardless of how you identify, regardless of your body, get yourself into some kind of sensational practice, some kind of autoerotic practice, some kind of self-pleasure practice. You can get used to feeling sensation, breathing into sensation, even when it's uncomfortable. Because the process of deconditioning is not comfortable. It's not. It's kind of, you kind of have to be a little masochistic. It's not always comfortable. And just like all things that are kind of uncomfortable, but that are healthy for us, the outcome's really good. It makes you realize good is a lazy word. The outcome is really empowering. It makes you realize your resilience and your capacity. Okay? So yes, you're going to feel yourself come face to face with your conditioning. As you do, don't judge yourself. As it gets really sensational, do not judge yourself. Don't. Use the judgment for discerning what you value and what you don't, what you're willing to pay your resources, your attention, your energy, your time, your space. Use your judgment for that, to discern that. Don't use your judgment to judge yourself when you see an ugly or a uncomfortable conditioning come up. We all have them. It's part of our experience. You know, the other day I was doing a self-pleasure practice, and people always feel surprised when I say this. I've done it for 10 years, and I still touch spaces in myself that I did not know exist. I still feel themes and archetypes and experiences come up, or sounds, or just different experiences that I've never had before. I continue to have these new experiences, and you will too, and you probably do too if you are practicing this. But last Friday morning, I dropped into my practice, and what came through really hardcore for me was this like mantra of like, Alyssa, you don't need to be afraid of people's shadows. You don't need to fear shadows. You don't need to fear them. They're a matter of perception. And what was really cool is that the imagery that came through during my self-pleasure practice with it was thinking about how at dawn or dusk, what are the shadows? They're longer, right? When light is lower, the shadows are longer. And so it's like this matter of perception. It was just fucking cool. And it was also really uncomfortable because it was humbling to feel myself go, oh yeah, sometimes when I do see people's shadows, I'm afraid of them. And if other implies self and self implies other, can I see how I might be afraid of my own shadows? Whew, that was so humbling. And that's, that is why it's so powerful and so transformational to actually drop into self-pleasure practice and to actually move through an autoerotic practice where you're moving sensation through the body and you're getting comfortable having this really big capacity for things that are incredibly pleasurable and also that are not as pleasurable, as opposed to ignoring them, sweeping them under the carpet, numbing out to them, or feeling so ashamed or guilty because of conditioning that you feel like you can't even look at them. And that's why at this 7th step here, I'm like, don't judge yourself. Because the minute that, like, if I had thrown myself into judgment with that story I just told with my self-pleasure practice and feeling the kind of acoustic awareness say, Alyssa, don't fear people's shadows when you see them. If I had judged myself for fearing them, I don't think I would have had the almost immediate awareness open up that I probably fear my own shadows, right? If other implies self and self implies other, then, and I see others how I see myself, like we started the conversation, I don't think I would have got that awareness. I think I would have just felt shame and guilt. And my whole system would have shut down. So it's like, can you see how staying open to sensation keeps our awareness open? And when our awareness is open, we can move through things a lot more gracefully because there isn't the shame, guilt, closing fear that happens when we start to identify with attachment to what conditioning tells us is right or good or pleasure or sex or hot or attractive or healthy. And instead we use body resonance to know the truth of what's good, attractive, hot, healthy, etc. Okay, so that's that. Not the end of the conversation, but that's the end of the steps. And like I said at the beginning, oh, cool little bee just came to the camera. I don't know if you could see that. Like I said at the beginning of explaining these steps, following your human design strategy and authority actually also works. You can follow those steps I just laid out for you. If you're on the email list, I actually sent them out last Friday with a little bit different language, with less detail, but nonetheless there. But if you follow your human design strategy and authority, you will actually probably move through the steps pretty organically, because when you start to employ your human design strategy, what you start doing is essentially responding using your inner authority to make decisions. And inner authority is never mental. And really most of our conditioning influences us through the mental plane. And so when you stop using your mind to make decisions and you start attuning to body feedback to make decisions, you stop making decisions from the mental plane, and therefore you stop making decisions from your conditioning. But just like I just explained, you still come very close to your conditioning, right? You still have to rub up against it, because it's going to, your mind's always going to turn on and be like, what do you think you're doing? That didn't go how you wanted it to. It's supposed to go like this. Your body's supposed to look like that. Your relationship's supposed to look like this. You're supposed to make money like that, right? That's the mind. It's not bad, but until we liberate it to be awareness, to be the objective observer, by liberating it from decision making, it's really difficult to do this process. Now, we have laid a very, in my opinion, and you can of course correct me if you've been listening through the whole thing, pretty thorough process of how you can decondition. And you can take those steps and you can apply them to how you make love, how you dress, how you express, how you have conversations, how you do your work, how you whatever. You can literally take those steps, apply them or juxtapose them or retrofit them to any process that you are committed to deconditioning through this Venus retrograde. And if you're going, Alyssa, how am I supposed to choose what to decondition during this Venus retrograde? Go look at your natal chart. If you are like, I don't even know how to do that, one of my favorite astrologers is Natha Campanella. You can find her at Electra Astrology. She did not pay me to say this. She's the astrologer I use when I want a personal reading and I want a different mind on my own stuff. She's incredible. Electra Astrology. I'll put her below when I share this. So, okay. We got it, right? We are looking at self, other in this Venus retrograde. And how we perceive ourselves, how we relate to ourselves, our inner life is going to condition or influence how we perceive the other, how we relate to the other, etc. I actually might make the lingerie conversation a totally different conversation because I would actually like to go in depth around it. And I still want to set the kind of tone, set the foundation for the Leo archetype to move through here. Because I'm sure a lot of you are like, okay, Alyssa, awesome on the deconditioning. Awesome on steps to move through that and to really dial that in. And I'm getting that. And in order to weave the Venus and Leo archetype in, what I want to turn our attention to next is this idea of selfishness, and this idea that's very Leonian in its expression of Leo is the sun, right? Leo is associated with the sun in the planetary system. And what is the sun? It's the center of the universe, or our universe, right? We need the sun. Without the sun, we would not exist anymore. And so the question I would leave you with, the question that I would say, hey, write this down and let this start to catalyze. Actually, we'll work in the lingerie conversation. Fuck it, we're in. The question I would leave you with here for the Leo kind of like anchor point is, how has my conditioning sculpted me? How has my conditioning sculpted me? Okay? Rather than thinking of conditioning as a marinade or thinking of conditioning as programming, think of yourself as the Leo archetype for a minute. Thank you. I appreciate that. Think about yourself as the Leo archetype for a second. You find self-actualization, Venus and Leo, through self-expression, right? Venus and Leo is really turned inward. It's really like, I am the center of the universe. And this is something that conditioning has taught many of us to be like, ugh, that's narcissistic. That's, oh, fuck yes, I love it. Please contribute. If you're like, someone just shared, hey, I literally had this conversation last night, mind blown, wow. Yeah, of course you did, because we are marinating in this right now, right? And this is why I love these conversations. I don't think that any of this is original thought. I think all of this has been said. All of this is being experienced by all of us. And so, yeah, for real, there's this concept of enlightened selfishness. There's a concept of like, hey, in order to really actually be part of a whole, be part of a collective that's healthy, each individual needs to MYOB, right? Each individual needs to mind their own business, and mind their own business in a way that sometimes through cultural conditioning seems really selfish. Y'all know how many times I've been called a narcissist? It doesn't happen as much anymore, but when I first really started writing and speaking and sharing, like again, back 2017, 18, when I shifted from like mainly climbing into just like more of my own thing, it was happening a lot. And that's something which let's not call anyone a narcissist unless they've been fucking diagnosed as that. Like, that's just lazy. It's just like using the word good. Everybody has narcissistic tendencies. Everybody needs to mind their own business. And there's shadow and exalted, right? There's spectrums here. And let's remember that. We're all having really nuanced experiences. So let's go back to the Leo archetype. Leo in Venus says, I self-actualize by expressing myself. Expressing ourselves is not necessarily always fun, because sometimes, and this is where it gets really easy to perceive the whole hour of foundation we just laid. Sometimes when you express yourself, other people see you through their own lens, right? We don't see things as they are, we see them as we are. So let's just ground into that. That's why we just talked about that for a whole fucking hour. Yeah? Cool. Because Leo expresses. Or Leo sometimes feels fear to express. Sometimes Leo expresses in a way that's like, you know what? I know that I'll be accepted if I express like this. So I'm going to express within these really narrow confines, and I'm going to hope that everybody accepts my expression, because this is the societally accepted expression. So I'm going to follow all the right rules and do all the right things, and here we go. Yeah? We all know that. We've all done that in order to be loved and accepted. That's what Leo wants. It wants to be loved and accepted. And it uses its expression, especially Venus in Leo, to be loved. And here's where Venus in Leo starts to get really sophisticated and beautiful and dynamic. When we stop expressing through that narrow lens, and instead we start using our body resonance and our truth as a springboard for expression, that is when we actually start to touch the exalted state of Leo. And what happens when we do that? Well, what happens when we do that is we start to meet rejection. Because guess what? People are going to see us as they are. And not everybody's going to like how we express. Not everybody likes olives. Not everybody likes coffee. Not everybody likes whipping cream. Not everybody likes lace. Not everybody likes that I'm about to say that I don't post in lingerie, because I think that that perpetuates a really narrow expression of sexuality. A narrow expression that I don't think there's anything wrong with, but that is such a really small sliver of sex and eros and life force and attraction and magnetism and interconnection and intimacy, and wow, that's in nature, that's in this conversation, that's in the woman that just said to me, or I imagine you, that's clunky, we're not even gonna go there, that's in the woman who just said to me, I had this conversation last night. Of course you did. That's erotic. That's erotic. My excitement is eros. I feel aroused by the conversation of sex and sexuality, and the erotic is a lot bigger than me sitting on a bed sexily posed in my lingerie. Is there anything wrong with that? No. Is that an entry point to eros? Yes. Does that make us feel really sexy and turned on and arouse other people? Absolutely. And I wonder how much of our reliance on lingerie in a bedroom is a perpetuation of the same Venus archetype that's soft, fluffy, bubble baths and boas, as opposed to the grit that makes us feel alive when we choose to realize our values and embody them. And look, your value might be, I want to post in fucking lingerie because it's challenging for me. I don't know. So, someone just asked, so is lingerie lazy? I don't know. I don't know if it's lazy. It could be lazy. It could be actually, and this is something that I will speak to, and this is where I feel like, this is why I'll say a million times over, posting in lingerie, if you're an erotic coach or a sex coach, do I think it's bad? No. It's so hard to post creatively because, at least for me, this is a projection, and I do have Saturn opposing my Mercury, so this is very real. There's always tension for me. Whenever I post something, which, look, y'all who followed for a second here, I think, okay, I want to go back to this question, but I want to finish this. I have posted nude for a really long time, and I've actually done it less, but I used to, okay, we're back, from this framework of like, hey, I need to reclaim my body. because my body's been so sexualized, my nudity, my whatever has been so sexualized that I actually want to reclaim it. And so I used to post a lot of nude, and also write in a way that was, if I'm being honest, kind of victim-y, because I was defending my right to be nude and saying, look, don't objectify me. Actually, if we want to talk Venus in Leo retrograde, it actually can be an exalted state to objectify ourselves and say, you know what, yeah, my nude body can be sexual, but you need to ask my permission if you want to bring that energy my way. Otherwise, please perceive me as just a nude human, right? And this is where the nuance happens. And this is why I'm responsible for my own safety, just like you are, right? It's such a beautiful conversation. Now, to go back to the, is lingerie lazy, or is it misleading for this space? In my opinion, when we use the bedroom and lingerie as our entry point, as our primary entry point to Eros, it perpetuates how we already are trained to interface with the energy of the erotic. It perpetuates this idea, and again, I'm speaking from a female body, but it perpetuates the idea that for me to be a conduit of Eros, I have to be culturally sexy, and I have to wear my sexy lingerie that caters to the male gaze. Now, I have nothing against the male gaze. In fact, oftentimes I have a fucking male gaze when I look at female-bodied humans. It's okay to appreciate beauty. And lingerie is a script. It can be a script. It can also be exalted. I love lingerie. I have a whole fucking huge basket of it under my bed, and I love putting it on. And the reason that I think that it sometimes can be misleading is because we already know that that's sexy. But you know what else is sexy? Go lay on a beach. Let the sun kiss your skin. Surrender to floating in salt water and the waves. Go dance your ass off till you're soaked in sweat. Go read a really thought-provoking, mind-blowing book. Go have a conversation with someone that you've never talked to. Go learn a new skill and feel the vulnerability and the heat of not understanding something for a second and being like, I don't know what I'm doing here. Those things, in my opinion, are also really sexy. Watch the rhythm of the year. Watch the high of summer and the low internalization of winter. That's Eros. Watch the giving of and receiving of a cloud turning to rain, of lightning striking the ground and starting a fire. When giving and receiving start to blur and we feel interconnection, that is erotic. And essentially lingerie, right? If I'm in lingerie and I post this really sexy photo and I evoke from someone seeing it a feeling of arousal, that's giving and receiving, right? And one could argue that the giving and receiving are kind of blurred, because I also received from the experience of dressing up in the lingerie and then having the photo shoot and getting to express myself. And so did the person receiving the photo, because they received my expression and it aroused them. And where this conversation gets me really passionate is sometimes what I see is that when we use lingerie in the bedroom as the primary entry point for sex, sexuality, sensuality, and the erotic, we get stuck there and we don't ever find the depth that Eros actually can give us. Why? Because then we only go so far as the script goes. So then we're in the situation and I'm like, okay, yeah, cool, I have my sexy lingerie on and there's a man or a woman who's about to engage with me, who's about to dance with me in this sexual way. And okay, what is the next script? Oh, I have to look like I'm fawning. Oh, I have to look a little afraid. Oh, I have to do this. And then it's like, oh, I have to make sounds like I'm in pleasure and I can't ask her what I want. And oh my God, I shouldn't sweat. Like, I need to make sure I don't sweat. And there's all of these scripts around how sex should look. And I need to make sure my asshole is perfectly bleached. and that my labia are very nice and neat and tight, and that my pussy is tight, and that I moan at just the right moments, and I lean my body open, right? It's like there's these scripts, and they're not bad, but they are surface level. And what happens when we attach to these scripts is that by attaching to these scripts, they actually cut us off. They cut us off from potentials, from possibilities of being open and attuned to body feedback, being attuned to resonance, being in the flow, following the natural organic rhythm that, in my opinion, our bodies are all attuned to. This will be another conversation, but this is why when you join or hire me or start working or dropping into erotic integration, I will tell you straight up, you're not going to get the skill, you're not going to get the how to give a perfect hand job, how to suck a dick. You're not. How to eat a pussy. Because guess what? If you are attuned to body feedback, if you can feel the rhythm of your experience, you don't need a skill book. You need open communication, and you need body attunement, and you need safety, and you need trust in yourself and whoever or whomever you are engaging with. You don't need some manual that tells you first you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this. Can those things be helpful? Yes. But can they also cut us off from possibilities? Absolutely. Can they also open our mind to new things and new possibilities? Yes. But again, just like with lingerie, it's a very surface level, or there's a high potential of getting stuck there as a surface level experience, because you're like, okay, cool, I have my lingerie on, I look hot on the bed, now what? And it also implies that you need another person in order to engage in the erotic. Now, yeah, you might be like, Alyssa, but someone could dress up in lingerie for themselves. Yes, they could. Yes, they could. There's nuance. I understand. Okay. Let's go back to the Leo conversation, though. And that's actually the next thing. Not bad, just shallow. Love that. Yeah. Yes, sex is not one size fits all, even with the same person. Yeah, even with the same person. We all are here to have different experiences. I've been having sex with the same person for almost 10 years. It's not the same sex. Hi. Oh my God. Hello. It's not the same sex. It's totally different. Why? Because of what I just talked about. There's no script. There's no skill set that's adhered to. There's rhythm. There's flow. There's curiosity. There's open communication. There's a sense of like, yeah, sure, sometimes I might put lingerie on. Absolutely. But is that the only way to evoke arousal or eros? No. In fact, sometimes, and this is the part of the lingerie conversation that I want to open us up to, it's like, there's so many different ways to get aroused. And sometimes it might be like, oh my God, you're sitting there watching a thunder and lightning storm, or like having a glass of wine, and the person that you're engaging with says something and you're like, wow, I've never seen that side of them. That's so attractive. No lingerie needed. Just vulnerability and expression of our uniqueness. And that's where this Venus in Leo, Venus retrograde, feels so potent, and it feels so important, because it's like, hey, low octave Leo thinks there's one specific way to get an applause. But what would happen if we stopped? Hold on, there's some questions down that I want to go to. I'm not going to be able to find them. That's okay. I'll just recall them. What would happen if we stopped trying to be sexy based on trying to receive an applause? Like, what would happen if we just show up the way that we want to show up, because we have body resonance with it and it feels good, and we're in our own rhythm and we're in our own flow and we're being ourselves, which obviously requires deconditioning. Hence why the next handful of weeks, as Venus is moving backwards, let's all own it and take responsibility for the places that we have relied on the scripts of how to be sexy or the handbooks that tell us do it like this. And instead, let's open into our experience and the sensation of our experience and actually feeling the flow of our experience. My flow might be really weird and different than yours, and yours might be really weird and different than mine, and that's beautiful. Because again, the polarity point, the high expression of Leo is, I'm not going to express myself for an applause. I'm going to express myself because this is what I feel like I want to express. This is what I feel convicted about. This is what feels like it wants to flow from me organically. Low octave says, no, I'm going to do the thing I know is going to get me an applause, even though my soul's dying a little bit. Okay? The polarity of Leo is Aquarius. And what are we in right now? The age of Aquarius. And so just as an archetypal kind of grounding, when we commit to deconditioning Venus, here for the authentic expression of Eros. To me, I know I just full pivoted randomly. I will go back to where I was at with the polarity point. Someone remind me if I lose it. I won't lose it though, polarity point. I have a super vivid memory of sitting on the bed when I lived in my van, because that's where you'd hang out, with one of my friends. And we were talking about attraction. And I told her someone that I thought was attractive, and she was like, you think they're attractive? And I was like, yeah. And she like looked at me for a second, and she's like, well, how do you define attraction? Like, what makes someone attractive to you? And I like stopped for a second, and I was like, honestly, it's their confidence in their own unique expression. And she was like, oh. She's like, that's not, I'm more of like a physical attraction person. And I was like, cool, totally cool. And so this is where like, there's no one right way to be attracted to people. And so, you know, the lens through which I'm speaking and through which my attraction flows, this is why I'm passionate about this conversation. Because to me, like, the most attractive humans are the humans who, whether it's easy or not, are themselves. And sometimes, like we were talking about, that looks selfish. And sometimes, like we were talking about, that looks narcissistic. And sometimes, like we were talking about, that doesn't always get an applause. And there's nuance. Like, we don't want to steamroll people. We don't want to, like, I'm not talking about that level of narcissism at all. But what I'm talking about is, in my opinion, everybody's the healthiest when they actually put themselves first. Because in my opinion, humans always put ourselves first. It's just whether we're delusional about that or not. And that's something my younger self would have cringed at. But I think on an evolutionary framework, that makes sense. If you don't put yourself first, then you can't really take care of other people. If you don't put yourself first, then when you see other people, you're going to see them through a lens that feels resentful, or that feels bitter, or that feels judgmental, inferior, superior, right? So it's like, actually, yeah, invitation here to take some time to put yourself first, to get clear on your values, to tell the truth, to be honest about what you can and cannot do, what you do and do not want to do, what turns you on and doesn't, what gets you hard, what gets you wet, what doesn't. That's always changing. And when we can decondition, we can open to more possibility. Gotta put your own safety mask on before you put anyone else's on. Amen. Amen. So yeah, how would you sculpt yourself if there was no fear that you wouldn't get an applause? How would you express yourself? How would you dress? How would you dress if you didn't fear rejection for it? How would you dress if you didn't fear people's judgment of you? How would you dress if, how would you make love? Like, seriously. I'm not trying to be spicy or sassy. Like, seriously. How would you show up in the bedroom if you didn't fear humiliation? What would you ask for in sex if you didn't fear judgment? Y'all, there's so much possibility in these experiences. I know. There's so much. And we cannot touch that possibility if we are confined by the very narrow range that our conditioning says, this is good, this is right. We can't. We cannot touch it. We can't even come close to it. And that's where, going back to the Leo Aquarius polarity point, Aquarius is out there, right? Think about Leo, right? Leo's like, we need to be majestic and we need to get the applause because that's how we express love. And Aquarius is like, fuck you guys. You're gonna do it. Totally opposite, very different, not the same as you. Not even close. Don't really care if you're clapping. Can you actually not clap? Because then I feel like, right? So they're very different. And like we said already many times, I'm going to always say it, there are low octave and high octave expressions of both. And if we can really see how they are interconnected, if we can see how, for example, when I show up in my truth, in my authentic expression, like genuinely in my weirdness, I'm going to say that instead of authentic expression because this is Leo Aquarius polarity we're talking about. When I can take this Venus retrograde and say, you know what, I've been doing this one thing like this because I think that I'm going to get applause for it, and I'm going to stop. And instead, I'm going to just do what feels true to me. And I'm going to be fucking honest with my voice, with how I talk, with how I walk, with how I express, with how I be, with how I love, with how I pee, literally everything, gonna do it how it's organic to me. High expression of Leo. When I can do that, I can enter into the collective, Aquarius, in a really healthy way. Because rather than trying to fit in to the Aquarian collective, or isolating myself because I don't think I fit in and I don't want to be judged and I don't want to be outcasted, and so I'm just going to stay over here, Shadow Aquarius. When I can actually bring that healthy Leo self-actualization, self-expression, even when the whole doesn't applaud, then what actually happens is I start to attract a collective, a community, a tribe, a clan, a pack, a family that resonates with my individual expression. And when there's resonance with my individual expression in my community, then I can take my individual expression and I can use it as a gift to my community because I'm in my uniqueness, and other people in my community are also in their uniqueness. And so none of us are trying to do the same job. Instead, we're coming together uniquely. And so there might be the erotic coach who is posting in lingerie and that's their jam. And it works for them and it's healthy for them. And then there might be the erotic coach who's like, listen, I really get off on dunking myself into rivers that are freezing cold. And that's how I connect with Eros. And cool, we're not doing it the same. And that's the other part of the lingerie conversation that makes me feel a little like, is that I wonder sometimes if, because that is the acceptable expression of sex energy, if you know you're going to get an applause when you're posting in lingerie. Do I have anything against it? No. And in fact, trust me when I say that I know the nuance of posting in ways that are provocative and that there is always an internal process to it. So, zero judgment. There's no one right way. Mean it when I say it. And in order to have a really healthy collective where we're bringing together genius, we're not copying each other. We're not copying symptoms of sexy or intelligent or healthy. Nah, we are bringing our own unique, healthy, intelligent, sexy, alive, whatever, to the group, to the collective. And we don't need other people to mirror the same thing back at us. Because that can also be low octave Aquarius. Oh, I can only take my weirdness where I'm preaching to the choir. And that's where it's really important to ground into the higher octave of Leo. Because if you can trade out your sense of outer validation, people going, wow, yeah, Alyssa's so good, good job. Yes, I love recognition, but don't praise me if you don't mean it, or don't praise me to make me feel happy. I'm not doing things for praise. If I was, I would not be very sustainable. Can we trade out the need for external validation? Remembering that people don't see us as we are. People see us, back to the fucking 90 minutes ago beginning of the conversation, as they are. And so really, as Venus moves retrograde, the invitation is to remember that. And to go, you know what? If I'm seeing people how I am, I need to dial myself in. I need to go within. I need to ask myself some of those hard questions that are like, yeah, do I actually value the things that I've been taught to? Or are some of the things that I identify with and embody as my values kind of making me a husk of a human? And yeah, the Aquarian polarity to the Venus in Leo is sometimes we embody those things that we don't really value because they're acceptable to embody. And if you find yourself realizing that as it comes to the surface, oh, I really changed my expression around this group or this person or these people because I want to be accepted. Don't judge yourself, just see it. Because guess what? There is circuitry in us that tells us to do that, because at one point, if you've ever read Clan of the Cave Bears, at one point, if you did express yourself in the Leo high octave that says, fuck the applause, I don't really care, I'm going to do what is real for me, what is weird, what is authentic, what is unique, what is mine, that would have meant, bye, out you go, you don't get access to resources. Not really the case anymore. Does that still live in us as an awareness? Yes. Is it actually the case? Not really. And so that's where, when I said earlier, watch your mindscape, watch the patterns of your mind where you start to victimize yourself because at one point you got kicked out of your high school friend group because you were too whatever. Do you still identify with that mental pattern? And if so, is that what you need to decondition this Venus retrograde? I don't know. Okay, so what we're doing, we're going to have more conversations. We're going to, as I've already said, I'll see you next Saturday, probably sometime around the same time. This morning, actually, I woke up and there was no electricity for like multiple hours. So I was like, yeah, this is going to go different than I thought. So that's part of why we're a little bit behind, but we're perfectly on time, always. Something I'm always learning. We're going to have lots of conversations. We're going to have the boundaries aren't punishment conversation, where we talk about the internal sense of safety. Like, I'm responsible for my own sense of safety. You're responsible for yours. We assert our boundaries. We communicate effectively. And before we have that conversation, invitation to anyone who tuned into any part of this to move through those steps, those deconditioning steps. We're going to talk about autoerotic practice and how it's not just for pleasure. And how we can interface with sensation better. How we can interface with sensation better, not just for more capacity when sensation's uncomfortable or when sensation's pleasurable, because that's hard too, right? Like, if you have ever genuinely received pleasure from another being, whether that was they made you a beautiful dinner, or they got you a really gorgeous gift, or they licked your clit, or they sucked on your cock, or they gave you a massage just for the sake of giving, and you really received that, it's really vulnerable, right? It's really sensational, and we don't always have the capacity to really receive that. So we're going to talk about capacity and sensation. We're also going to talk about uniqueness, because one of the things here, I kind of made this fun little spectrum thing. I know you can't read my handwriting. I have Aquarius fucking conjunct my rising. I write in code. That's called very messy cursive. Very fast cursive. My hand can never keep up with my mind. That's why I do stream of consciousness voice memos. Different story for a different time. But this is what we're looking at right now. Leo, okay? Rather than being the best, I will be Aquarius, uniquely me. And I want to unpack that one too, because I feel like as we move into an age where we're doing business different and we're showing up different and projector humans, for example. I know there's at least one of you on here. Sometimes projectors, we compete with each other because we're like, I want to be the projector that gets invited, and I want to be the projector that gets recognized. And it's subtle, but we've learned to compete by being like, oh, we have really similar skill sets. Now we have to compete. And it's like, actually, hold on. No one's ever going to be me, and no one's ever going to be you. You know why? Because what we're moving toward is the more unique we get, the more specific our skill set. And you can't compete with unique. You can't. I'm like, did I just quote Beyonce? I don't know. Who knows? Leo competes. Low octave. I need to be the best. Otherwise, I'm not the lion. Aquarius. Higher octave. Same sauce, different flavor. Mwah, love. Aquarius contributes. And honestly, Leo contributes. They're same, right? They imply each other. So just keep that in your mind. Leo's not worse than Aquarius. Aquarius is not better than Leo. Not at all. Leo. I need low octave. I need to be accepted by the other to feel actualized. High octave Leo, I will accept myself. Right? I will accept myself. Period. Done. Someone just turned on a machine in one of the houses that's nearby, and I'm getting really distracted by it. Okay, let's actually stop there because I could just read all these to you. You get it. Does anyone have questions? Does anyone have contributions? Does anyone have things they want to share before I go play? And before I go practice all the things that I'm saying. Thank you to you, human, who has been here since the beginning and has commented a bunch. I really appreciate it. It's like, I appreciate all of you who have been in the flow and have been in the conversation. And when there's ping pong points, whether you're agreeing with me or not, when there's dynamism in just like, hey, this is an idea, this is what I'm feeling, I had that conversation last night, holy shit, it feels really cool for me. So thank you for that. I will see you guys next week, probably Saturday again, I'm thinking. And I don't know what I'm going to talk about yet. We'll see what the themes of the week feel like. And we'll go from there. Again, just a big thank you. Seriously. Okay. Peace. Oh, actually, before I get off here, no, we're going to end it. Okay, bye.